that sound okay? All right. Well, my story starts earlier this January. I had just gotten home from work, feeling the aches and pains of being pregnant with twins. I was 2 days shy of being 36 weeks along, so needless to say, I was very swollen, tired, and full of babies. So this was not an unusual day to not feel very well. So I spent most of my time in bed that night. Luckily, my other children are old enough that they can take care of themselves. So what I got to focus on was my next day's appointment. And what any woman worries about for their next day's appointment is shaving their legs. So, needless to say, in my bathroom with tears strolling down my face, because again, very pregnant, I found new positions that we won't talk about of cutting my toenails and shaving my legs, but I got it done. So, I go back to bed, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I woke up for probably the 5th time to go to the bathroom. And as I was sitting up, I felt a little gush, and I thought, nice, I just peed my pants. Great. So there was just one little second that I thought, maybe it's my water breaking. And I know without looking at anyone right now, people are going, does she not know when her water breaks? She has how many children? And the answer is no, I don't. I had never had my water break naturally, so I had no idea what that was supposed to feel like. Number one, not what it shows in the movies. Number two, it's not even what your doctor tells you. So, go to the restroom, come back, and I laid down for about an hour, hour and a half, and I wake up to some pains, but again, not unusual. I don't feel well most of the time. So that went on for a little bit, and things started progressing, and more pains, and going to the restroom and coming back, but my mind just kept telling me, you know what, this is no big deal, it's just pain. One, I'm going to Des Moines today to my doctor's appointment, so that's where I was focused at. And two, as long as there is no bloody show, everything's fine. So 5 minutes apart, 3 minutes apart, then just one on top of one another. And then I went to the restroom, and there was my proof. And my brain went, okay, so do you believe me now? And my heart did sink about that time, because clear up until that moment, all of my ultrasounds showed that baby A, who was going to be born first, was breached, and baby B, 50-50 chance. So I was very sad and nervous and just thought, oh my gosh, I now put these babies in an emergency situation, not what I planned on doing. And I remember just saying out loud, I'm so sorry to these unborn children. So I call my husband. He drives over the road, so he wasn't at home. But luckily, knock on wood, he was still in Cherokee, Iowa, which does not happen. He's usually clear out of the state by then. So I called him and said, I'm so sorry I waited too long. He said, it's fine, you know, call my mom, because she was going to drive me up to Des Moines that day. And so he was headed that way. So I called his mom, told her. She got into gear. I get dressed, put on a pair of his athletic pants and a hoodie over my t-shirt, and go and wake up my 16-year-old son, who proceeded to say, Mom, that's not funny. I said, I'm not kidding, and his eyes got about this big. So I knew then that I wasn't going to make it to Des Moines, but my focus now was to either make it to the nearby town that hadn't delivered babies for over 16 years, or at least get to an ambulance that could transport me to Des Moines, because I knew that's where I was going. But I also knew I was not having these babies in front of my 16-year-old son. That's way too much therapy for a child. So I'm sitting there waiting, and you know, most of us hide pain from our loved ones, especially our children. So he's frantically looking out the front door, waiting for my mother-in-law, and where's she coming? You know, she'll be here. And so she gets there, and I get into the front seat, and I sit down just like anyone else would. And I said, I'm wanting to push. He goes, oh, don't. We need to. I said, I know. Just let's go. And so we proceed down the road. And I focus a lot dealing with pain, closing my eyes. I don't know if anyone else does that. So I closed my eyes and would open them to see where we were, make sure everything was going well. And so we get through town and we get to the interstate bridge. And she's on the phone with 911, letting them know that, what's going on and the breached, and send an ambulance just in case. And so we get to the interstate bridge, and I said, Shirley, there's the interstate. And she says, no, I'm telling them we're staying on Highway 69. I said, okay. So I closed my eyes. And about that time, my body said, you know what? You've handled this enough. I got this. So my eyes are closed. I felt a huge contraction, pressure, fluid, relief. And Trace was born. So I'm sitting there, and she's still on the phone. I said, Shirley, I just had one. She says, and she says, what? I said, I just had one of the babies. He's crying in my pants. So she's frantically telling the 911 operator, she just, did this. And so I said, you probably need to pull over. So we get pulled over, and we get him out and just put him right underneath the sweatshirt. And just his little face was showing. And so he looked like any of my other babies that were born in hospitals, so I knew he was healthy. So everything was okay. So the ambulance gets there, and we get transported over to a neighboring hospital, again, that hadn't delivered babies for over 16 years. And I had told them, I said, are you just going to take me to Des Moines? They said, honey, we can't do that. We legally have to stop. Okay. So we get there, and I don't know who thought it was a good idea to listen to me, but I said, just send the doctor out. Just have him check me. I want to go to Des Moines. And so they sent a poor staff member out to deal with me. And he's, Tina, I'm really soft-spoken, and, I could do this, but it'd be easier to bring you inside. I'm like, no, I'm going to Des Moines. And I could see the look upon this gentleman's face, and he was very nice, so I agreed, okay, just get me in there, hurry up, and then send me on my way. And so I get in there, and luckily, unbeknownst to me, they had called Dr. Wells from a neighboring town, who is very active, still delivering babies. And up until that point, I'd never met Dr. Wells. I'd heard his name before, heard very good things about him. So he introduced himself. I instantly felt safe. He was exactly what I needed right then. So I was still telling him how much I was concerned about the breach, and he said, whatever happens, I'm going to check you, and we've got this. So I knew I could trust him. So he proceeds to check me. He says, I feel a head down. And I said, are you sure? And he said, honey, I've been doing this a long time. I'm pretty sure. I said, okay. He said, so I'm going to break your water, and next contraction, you just push. And the only question I had for him was, is it going to be quick? He said, yes. No problem. So one push, Grayson was born. Healthy, perfect. So Dr. Wells got everything set up for us. The boys had to go to the NICU because they were born early. And so we were transported. And before we were transported, he came in and asked me one last thing. He says, is there anything else I can do for you? And I said, can I have a hug? And he gave me a hug. And it was exactly what my husband would have done. So we got to Des Moines, all of us, safe and sound. And miracle, I wasn't in my room very long, and my husband comes in, and he had gotten to see his boys. Very excited for that, of course. And those first 2 days were pretty hectic. A lot was going on. A lot of it I was in a daze, and some not so fun things. But I remember that Friday, I went up and walked up to visit the boys in the NICU, and my husband wasn't at the hospital at the time. And so I went up by myself and was greeted by one of the wonderful nurses that were taking care of our boys. And she was asking me if I wanted to kangaroo with them, which is another term for skin on skin with babies. And so I said yes, and I'd also like to try to hold them together, because I had never done that before. And so I get ready, and she positions these two little babies in their diapers. If you can imagine, like the frog position when you swim, sitting like little frogs, just side by side. And I didn't think about this, but I'm so grateful that she did. She said, "Do you want me to take pictures for you?" And I said, "Yes, that would be great." And so I have very wonderful treasures for those pictures. And she handed me a mirror, and I kind of, what am I supposed to do? She goes, "Well, that way you can look at them." And you don't really think about that when you're holding your children. And so there I sat, looking at them with the mirror and holding them, and telling her my story, because at this point a lot of the staff had heard the buzz about how they were born. And so just, telling more of the story with her, it just, really got me to thinking about how important it really was of all this. And so she left the room to give me some quiet time with them, and I just remember sitting there thinking, wow, they're healthy, they look perfect, and the last thing I remember just thinking was, wow, I did that. Thank you.